98.3 FM. And we have with us via Zoom performance artist, poet, and author Janet Kuypers. How are you today, Janet?
I am quite all right. Oddly enough, even while we're still in quarantine times, I feel like I'm running around and trying to take care of so many things at once, even though it's usually often in my own home. Hi, how are things in Chicago? I just got back from Chicago. I feel bad that I couldn't meet up with you while I was in town.
Well, that's okay. We could catch up some other time now and do a follow-up interview, so it's fine. 2 interviews are better than 1.
Sure, it sounds wonderful.
Okay, Janet. So, what inspired you to pursue communications and poetry rather than computer science and engineering?
I started off in school actually at Carl Sandburg High School, but I focused on computer science because I was really good at math and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and it seemed like a smart idea and a good moneymaker, blah, blah, blah. And as I had gotten off to school at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, I realized that there were a lot of issues out there that a lot of people weren't able to address, and I saw a lot of injustices and things in the world. And I found myself, even when I was in high school, I was doing portrait photography. I found myself writing and taking pictures to relieve any sort of stress of what I had seen around me. So I thought this computer stuff might not be the way that I should go. And so I looked around and I said, well, I seem to be writing a lot. I'll go into news editorial journalism because I'm always trying to get the story on people. So it seemed like a natural switch. And so I focused on graphic design, and I ended up designing magazines, and that is what I still do to this day.
Well, you were very good at math, and were you able to apply mathematical principles to poetry, to writing, to communications, to what you love to do?
I don't know if it was mathematics so much, although I think that ascribes to me being much more logical than I think the average poet is. We talked briefly, I think, in the past about the fact that I ran a poetry open mic in Chicago at the Gallery Cabaret eventually, and I noticed, because it was from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the evening, and there was a music act that followed, and so we had to start on time. And guess what? Poet time, nobody would get there at 7. And so I would often start by, I will read things from new issues of the literary magazines that I run and things like that. And so maybe that's because I'm a little more logical. Oh, we've got a schedule. We have to stay on time with these things. And so I would start things and get things going, and then start an open mic as soon as people would start showing up. So, and the other funny thing is, when I was looking for creative outlets of what things to write, one time I decided, I think, science geek, I'm going to write a poem for every element in the periodic table. And so I actually did that, which was crazy, and it's finished before. I think in the recent years they've gotten the element names for 115 through 118 now, but back when I did it they didn't have names, and so I just decided I will look for things that way and find things that are poetic even in science and try to mesh those two ideas together as well.
So did you create a poem for element 115 to 118?
Yep.
116 to 118.
Unum septium, unum octium, and that was about a Russian person that was trying to get the elements together to be able to find these things, and had to get things from Berkeley, and yeah, I wrote about these things. And in fact, that one poem, which I'm not going to do here, I read like I have a Russian accent because, as you said, I'm a performance artist. I can't just can't read things off. And that's something I also noticed when I ran poetry mics in Chicago as well as in Austin, Texas. Now I'm doing a monthly one that is titled Poetic License, which is available as a Zoom meeting. So if anyone is interested, on the first Sunday of every month, you can still go. And I still get Chicagoans that will show up to the Zoom meeting for Poetic License too. But I noticed that back in Chicago, when I would have features, people would come with a stack of papers and they wouldn't know what order to read. And I'm like, you had this, you knew this was coming. You couldn't plan what you were going to, I have my things scheduled out and figured out exactly, and for the time allotments. And because I've done stuff so many times with trying to come up with music in the background or something that will just pull people in a little bit more, I would have a whole setup. And in fact, Charlie Newman, who I took the open mic over for, that was in Chicago, called me the queen of multimedia and the czarina of multimedia, because I would have video cameras going, and I'd have, anything just to be able to try to give people something else to look at. So.
And how did you get your Russian accent to use?
I just guessed, I just extrapolated what I figured sounded appropriate, and it probably didn't, although people were impressed that I could keep it the entire poem. But but it was just, just something for performing the poem, so. And I was going to say, you had asked about what made me go into choosing the issue changing from math to that. And I actually had something that I had written something about it. If you'd like a poem that actually relates to that, I would love to share it. I've got a poem that is the Reaching the End edit of the poem Burn It In, which actually appeared in the CC&D, one of the magazines I run, volume 285, I think, that is called Black and White. But this poem, as I said, is called Burn It In. Once I was at a beach off the west coast of Florida with a friend on New Year's Eve, and I watched the waves crash as the yellow moon hung over the Gulf like a swaying lantern. My friend watched the scene and said, I need to look at this scene and memorize it, burn it into my brain, record it in my mind so I could call it up when I wanted to, so I could have it with me always. I, too, have my recorders. I burn these things into my brain. I burn these things onto pages. I pick and choose what needs to be said, what needs to be recorded. When I first went to college, I was studying to be a computer science engineer. I wanted to make a ton of money. I wanted to beat everyone else. Because burned in the back of my brain were the taunts of kids who were in cliques so that others could do the thinking for them. Because burned in my brain were all those evenings of the high school dances that I never went to. Because burned in my brain were all those people that I knew I was better than, who thought they were better than me. Well, yeah, I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to beat everyone else. But I hated what I was doing, and I hated what I saw around me. I hated all the pain that people put each other through. And all these memories just kept flooding me. So in my spare time, to keep me sane, to keep me alive, I wrote down the things I could not say. That is how I recorded things. When I looked around me and saw friends raping my friends, I wrote. I burned into these nightmares with a pen. And yes, I have this recorded. I have all this recorded. What did you think I was doing when I was stuffing handwritten notes into my pockets or typing long hours into the night? I was sitting at a computer lab, slamming my hands, my fingers against that keyboard because there were too many atrocities in the world, too many injustices that I had witnessed, too many people who had wronged me, and I had a lot of work to do. There had to be a record of what you had done. Did you think your crimes would go unpunished? Did you think that I wouldn't remember? Well, you see, that's what I have my poems for, so there'll always be a record of what you've done. Yes, I have defiled many pages, as in your honor, you who swung your battle axe high above your head and thought that no one would remember in the end. Well, I made a point to remember. I've defiled many pages. And have you defiled many women? Is this what makes you a strong man? You, the man who rapes my friends, the man who rapes my sisters, the man who rapes me? You want to know why I do the things I do? I had to record these things. That is what kept me going. When people were dying, that's what kept me together. When my friends went off to war, that is what kept me together. And when my friends were raped and left for dead, that is what kept me together. And when no one bothered to notice this, or change this, or care about this, these writings kept me together. I need to record these things to remind myself of where I came from. I need to record these things to remind myself that there are things to value and things to hate. I need to record these things to remind myself that there are things worth fighting for, worth dying for. I need to record these things to remind myself that I am alive. There you go.
Wow, that's good. I know that you were an acquaintance rape counselor, so did you write this before or after your work?
That was written probably a few years after I was doing my work as an acquaintance rape workshop facilitator. I would hear stories from other people, and you hear them, and these stories become a part of you. I mean, you can't have it not. These things are, people are being able to be so personal with you, and after a while it feels like you're carrying the weight of so much, even if you're just listening to stories like this, when there's only so much that you can do in the means of helping people become strong for themselves and get on for themselves.
Were any of those experiences contained in your Scars 1997?
Scars 1997. It's funny that you bring up that poem. As you had heard me say, I run two literary magazines. One of them is CC&D magazine. The other is Down in the Dirt, and they are both under the umbrella of Scars Publications, which is a prose poem that I wrote, and it sounds like such a great name, Scars Publication. It was something that I wrote back in '93 about how we have scars, emotional, physical, like when I fell and my parents said, "Did you correct the sidewalk?" Or when a family member yelled at me and used swear words for something that wasn't my fault, or when I scratched my chin, when I had the chicken pox, or any of these kind of things. And I think back in '97, which is just the year I happened to write that second poem, that's all that meant for Scars 97, was to also say that sometimes in that poem I wear my scars like badges. I've had these things, and you can be traumatized by them. The scars can scar you. Or you can say, this is a part of what makes me who I am now. I think, and then this relates to the acquaintance rape idea, I guess, as well. When you go through something that terrible, it is terrible, it genuinely is, and you can say, I wish it didn't happen. But then again, you look at yourself afterward, and how you have grown and become stronger as a person because of the battles you've had to deal with, that sometimes getting rid of those elements could actually unravel who you actually are now as a person. And that although you would never want these bad things to happen, sometimes keeping in mind that the person that you are now, if you like who you are now, if me as a woman, feeling with the concepts of sexism in everyday society, being objectified still to this day, it's lovely. If you don't have those kind of bad things that might help make you stronger for it, you would not be able to deal with the things that you do now in the same way, which is a really strange way to say things, but it's the fact that scars can be something that you can also learn from and grow from. Humorous thing, I moved to Austin, Texas because of my husband's job, and he says to me jokingly when we moved back in 2015, he said, well, now that you moved here, the Cubs will probably win. And the next year they did. After over a century or whatever. And in fact, I was walking back after the rain delay, and I don't know if I could show off my knee here. I slid and fell, and I gouged my knee. And people are like, oh, you can get some sort of scar remover to get rid of that. And I think, well, A, I'm probably never going to be a knee model, and B, this is kind of a fun memory of like what happened when the Cubs actually won, and why feel bad about every single scar that you have. So there's an element to bringing Chicago back into scars, I guess. But I've written about scars since then, but that's the reason why I had the name for Scars Publications, and I've written a few things about scars because we all have them, and oftentimes that's what poets will do, is write about the scars that they've had to go through.
Did you get any recognition when you were a high school student at Carl Sandburg High School for poetry, etc.?
That's really kind of funny that I happened to go to Carl Sandburg High School, and I did write poetry then, but a lot of it rhymed, and I'm not that fond of what I was writing then. It wasn't something I would be that thrilled with, although I've got if you can see, it's a really tiny page here. I've got something from high school that is actually in one of my books called Contents Under Pressure, because, whatever, it might explode if you razzle me up too much. Contents Under Pressure. This short one is called Sometimes the Light. Sometimes the understanding travels into the realms of the unknown. All we can do is hope, search, dream, because we will never find. Sometimes the light is not enough. I wrote a little bit in high school, but it was as I was facing more and more issues of the day or for dealing with a woman as they grow up into an adult, which was probably after leaving Carl St. Brooke High School, where the more emotional stuff for me would come from. So.
Yes. And was there any significance to 1997 except for that was the year in which you wrote Scars 1997?
No, it was just happened to be the year for that one, but I was just trying to look through things and by the way, I have this WZRD sticker, which I don't know if people I still have it and I've kept it with me and I won't stick it on anything because I don't want to lose it. But I'm like, yay for WZRD, as old as that sticker is. That actually is the year, I think, when you talk about the idea, which we might get into later, about milestones or interesting things in your life. As an artist, as a graphic designer, I was doing really well in Chicago, and I decided in '97 to quit my job with all of the money that I had saved, keep my apartment that I've got there, and travel around the country by car, and I was able to pull that off. Things were, there may have been whatever little stresses of the day or whatever, but that's just a part of, getting older or growing up or dealing with new changes in life for that, I suppose. I'm just trying to think of what other things we'd like to talk about. So.
Well, how did your work as an acquaintance rape workshop facilitator affect your poetry? Did it? Was it like
did
deeply?
It actually really did, because the journalist side of me for news education and news editorial journalism at the U of I, my writing is very journalistic and oftentimes could almost be brought into paragraphs, and so I would write about rape education and what people had gone through, or if I would see things with issues that they'd come up with. I was seriously looking, because you were interested in poems to sprinkle throughout this, and this was something that was right when I had started, I believe, a year or two right into working with acquaintance rape issues, that I wrote this piece that is titled The Room of the Rape, and it is in the first book that I ever wrote or published in From Scars Publications, called Hope Chest in the Attic. So this poem, I've never read this for anyone, so this is kind of weird. This is called The Room of the Rape. For almost 2 years, when I walked up those 9 steps, held onto the wooden railing whose finish was worn, I'd pass the first door on the right. My bedroom door was closed for 1 year, 10 months, and 7 days. I slept in the den across the hall. One morning I woke, I walked into the hall, and I looked at that door. I turned around, knowing I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the den, folded up the bed back into the couch, and then walked into the hall, squarely facing that door to that room. The room in my house that I let him into. But when I woke up this morning, I told myself that wouldn't let him stop me today. I turned the handle of the door. I heard a snap. I slowly pushed the door open, slowing it down to hear the hinges creak. The shades from the small window in the corner were drawn, so I stepped into the parquet floor and turned on the light. I felt the walls jump back in fear, a fear of having to see the light again, then rush in on me in anger. I saw the bedsheets rustle, get kicked and tossed to the ground again. I tasted the sweat, and I wanted to spit, but I couldn't. Something told me that wasn't what I was supposed to do. My bedroom. I saw the fists reach out from the walls as the thought of the poster I drew of rebellion and rage that is tucked in the back of my closet. I felt the muscles tense behind my eyebrows. I pursed my lips. I swallowed the sweat. My bedroom. I felt the fist punching my stomach, grabbing my face, my arms, my hair, pulling my legs apart. I felt my head against the pillow again as I tried to just push my face into the salt and the sheets. I heard the screams I never made echo inside me in screams, the screams that haunted me. I closed my eyes from the pain and the light. My bedroom. I thought of the fist, the symbol of the communist work ethic to do what you're told, to disappear into society. I opened my eyes. The room was mine. The sheets on the floor, the stains on the bed, the smell of hell, and the photograph on the dresser. I looked at the picture and turned to one of him with his arms around me. I picked up the frame, ran my hand along the gilded edges. Flakes of paint fell to the floor. I opened the drawer of the dresser and I gently put it face down. I turned around, shutting off the light, and I slowly went out of my bedroom. Well, that's a weird one.
Yes.
But then again, that's what happens when you were like, how do these things affect you? And this was written, I think, right when I was doing the things at the beginning, and then I would continue. And I'd be well after school, and I wouldn't be doing these things anymore. And people who'd know me, hi, my wife has an issue, and I need to, and I'm like, okay. Here we go. And it would still go on, and I would still hear it. And so that continues to happen. And a lot of times now it just reverts to the concept of sexism and objectification and that kind of thing as well, and opportunities that are afforded to women versus all people.
Yeah. So what happened to you caused you to become an acquaintance rape workshop facilitator?
Well, there are things that happen to us as individuals, whether we hear them for others or you hear of family issues with other people or have your own family issues. You can then translate that to very easily what other people are going through. So it's and by doing that, you end up, the more you hear about it, the more it also becomes a part of you, whether or not that has happened to you or not. You know. So
you were nominated for the Pushcart Prize several times, and what small presses nominated you, and was it nominations for work such as this, acquaintance rape poetry?
I cannot remember what pieces were nominated, but I think in light of the fact that other people whom I've heard, when they say I've been nominated, they never bothered talking about the press that did that, so I would also not do the same. And I also don't have that information on me to be able to give to you right now anyway, but no, I've never seen anyone else discuss, oh, these people nominated me, so I'm going to, in light of what others have done, ascribe to that as well. So, and I don't have them written down here anyway, right here in my space. So,
yes.
But it's cool that I was that I have over the years have been on dean's lists at Carl Sandburg High School and at U of I, or that I was in National Honor Societies at Carl Sandburg, that kind of thing. That's all well and good. They are just stepping stones to helping you become what you are, is all I can say, instead of saying, oh, yay, I got this and I got that, you know, that kind of thing. So it's just a stepping stone to help make you who you are. So that'd be my answer.
Wow. But how did you come to be published in books, magazines, and on the internet
so many
over
times.
10,000 times for writing and over 17,800 times for artwork?
It's crazy. At the beginning, when I first started out on my own to publish stuff, I would send submissions, and these are back in snail mail days, because the internet was only being created at my school when I was graduating. But a lot of people were rejecting me for poems that are really good and later have been published a lot since. And so I would get snail mail magazines, and I would notice that the people that were rejecting me were the people that were being published in magazines. And I thought, I'm a designer, I can do this stuff. And so I decided to start my own. And when I started CC&D with Scars Publications, a couple of years went on, and poets like C. Ron McGirt from Kentucky, he was like, you've been publishing me so much, how can I pay you back? I'm like, I don't know, start your own magazine and start publishing me. And which he did, but he published other things as well. But I think the idea of becoming an editor or something sounds like, well, you must be somebody important or something, and it takes that as a level of gravity to you as a writer as well. And so then, as silly as that sounds, that actually made a huge difference just by saying that, oh yeah, I'm an editor of a literary magazine and this, and they're like, oh, we'll take, and then magazines would be like, oh, we'll take all of these things of yours and would put them in all sorts of issues, or somebody took a ton of my artwork and would set up things and do covers. couple of magazines, Art Life would have things, and I would have a ton of stuff in Art Life, although that's a shame that they don't exist anymore. But there would be places that would be welcome to take as much as they could. Oftentimes, there were a couple websites which I don't list in those credits that you list that were like, we'll just take all of your poems and put them in, ta-da. It helps. It helps actually when you are actually in the industry, the magazine publishing, literary world in the first place. I think that is a huge stepping stone, because that's all I thought when I was like, I'm being rejected for poems that are good, and why? Oh, these are editors are being published. Maybe I should do that. And I did that in my spare time and loved it. CC&D magazine used to be monthly in a saddle stitched, and then it was 100 pages in brad stapled and huge, and eventually went to after a near fatal, I guess this would be another milestone, a near fatal car accident where two cars hit me while I was stopped in an intersection, and I was in a coma for 11 days. Had to relearn how to walk and talk and eat. I was then saying I have to make these things a bit more permanent instead of having these saddle stitch things, and I started using an American press from Lulu, and then I thought, well, let me find something that's more directly affiliated with Amazon, because now I can have people who are submitting poetry from the UK, from Spain, and people from Africa. I feel bad. I'm like, they're like, how do I get a copy? I'm like, I'm really sorry. I've got Amazon, and we cover most countries, and I apologize it's not able to get to you. I can get to Australia, but a lot of India as well. I get a lot of writers from India. But that was why I said I'm going to make that something bigger than just my saddle stitch things for when I'm no longer here.
So what you're saying is that after you started publishing, creating your own press, and then people came calling and asking for your past work.
Yes, which is really funny because, I remember one of the poems, which is, I'm not going to say it because I've read it too many times. It's called The Burning, a really short poem of mine. It's a good poem, and nobody was accepting it. And then after I was running a magazine for a year or two, everyone and their brother wanted it, and and so it's I think it's the thoughts of the editors as they're reading stuff. As for me, I take people who send writing from prison, or for it doesn't matter to me where it comes from. I don't think of things that way. If the writing is good, the writing is good, and I'm sure that's what others would say as well. But I seem to notice only a change once I actually started editing a magazine myself.
So now that you are editing your own magazine, you're giving more opportunities to others, and are not
that don't have the opportunity.
Yes, you're not treating others as the others treated you.
No, definitely not. But I don't know. I can't define how others treated me. So I really can't make that statement, because they might have just been like looking and just rejecting stuff because they didn't know who I was. They could have been something that simple. I can't speak to why it wasn't. I can't say that, they treated me poorly because I wasn't an editor. That sounds silly. So I'm sure that's not the case, but I feel like I work a lot to get these magazines out monthly. And then every once in a while people are like, yeah, you do need a vacation. I'm like, yeah, I've been like doing a full-time job and I don't get paid for it. And but I hope people appreciate it. I enjoy it if it wasn't so much work, but I hope everyone else enjoys it as well. So.
Well, we're enjoying it right now. What about you're being a performance artist? Did that come after all this? After you started publishing, etc., your own press?
I did the press, but I wasn't reading in places. The first place I'd ever read was Yammer with Lisa Heminger, like 95, I think, or something. And I would get to perform stuff, but just by reading. But then, as I would see other people just kind of just reading and being very meek, I said, I can't do that because I want people to actually listen and remember what I had said. So I started trying to find ways to be more interactive. I think in '97 I had a feature with Jason Pettis where we did back and forth poems. I'm like, all right, I'm doing one about Mardi Gras. I'm going to actually stand up on a table like I'm on a balcony and do stuff while I'm performing and do back and forth and do a poem. I'm like, hey, Jason, you're going to have a cigarette. Give me it so that I can say, oh, and I took your cigarette, and I take a drag, and I would try to start doing things like that. And I thought that would help pull people in a bit more. I had mentioned the accident that I had been through, which I wrote a lot for, and some of it is very poor because I was still learning how to read at the same time. But I then came back to Chicago, and David Rubin, who is a man that had the open mic then ended up eventually taking over, he's like, hey, you should have features. You're on the scene. And I just traveled around the country by car for a year, and I just almost died in an auto accident. I haven't been on the scene, but okay, I'll do features. And so instead of sitting there and putting my face up, I would have a big screen and I would read poems and have things going on just so that you wouldn't have to be staring at my face, which was very different from the very animated way you see me performing now. And if I use my hand anymore in this frame, I'll probably freak people out or give people seizures or something with my hands moving so much. I don't know. But I try to be expressive and emote as much as possible. I was talking about the accent stuff, and I feel like I'll just mention something really briefly before going on. I did collect all of the poems into one book that I don't know if anyone's bought. That's called Recovery, simply put, and even has a photo of me right after the accident, but me in the hospital bed while I had 2 black eyes because I had a head trauma at the same time. I figured I was going to look for a poem that I hadn't shared with anyone. It's a short one on this page here, and it's called We All Want That. Not a lot of people think about killing themselves. I mean, not a lot of people think of it as a real option because, I mean, when things get tough, when you get the bad breaks, well, they get better. Eventually they do. And no one wants to think about the bad stuff. And everyone wants to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And no one wants to think that the bad things can ever happen to them. It's like they think they're invincible or something. But sometimes things don't work out that way. And no, you don't want to think about the bad stuff. You want to think about the things that are supposed to make life grand for you. We all want that, don't we? I'm not bringing up a bunch of bad accent poems because I don't want to do that right now for everyone, but there are a number of them, so. And that relates to how things will affect your writing and what you go through. Because I think after that I wrote a lot of poems about death. Because these are the things that you are sitting and facing. Your values, or you reevaluate how you express your true beliefs instead of just saying I'm just going to roll along and go with whatever anyone does and not say anything. You start to actually say no, there has to be more, and that will change you as well. So I guess that's another weird element of my past. Sorry.
This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM, and we are speaking with Janet Kuypers, performance artist, author, and a poet. Janet, so when you were concentrating a lot of your work on scars, was that before or after the accident?
The accident happened 5.5 years after I started Scars Publications. I was running CC&D, but because we all have scars, as that first prose poem goes, if your parents treating you terribly as you're being raised, or if something, happens to women, these are all emotional scars as well as physical scars, that kind of thing. So, so scars existed before the accident came, and, because scars, we all have them from different things. And I think that's one of the later poems I wrote called Vanishing Scars. And I'm like, I talk about things like that mark when I scratched when they had the chicken pox, and, well, where is it? I don't see it anymore. And so I asked my husband, this is the effect of the poem, I asked my husband, do you remember seeing this? He's like, no, I never see the scars. I just see you, and it's a bright light and everything is wonderful, and you forget that if you see these scars, others may not, and it's all just a matter of how you are dealing with what you've got, and that can make all the difference in the world. Which has been time with the accident as well, because that was from July 11th, 1998 was when that accident happened. Was that 23 years ago?
Yeah.
And I'll never get over it. I never will, so I'm not going to talk more about it because it's just, it was that awful, and I'll just leave it at that. So these are things that you always cope with. It's just a matter of how long or how you deal with them on a day-to-day basis. You know, and that's the same kind of thing, like if you happen, well, what happens when a parent dies? Well, yes, it's terrible. You don't want to think about it at all. And then eventually, well, life goes on. This is how life evolves. People born, they raise families, they pass away, and this is the whole cycle of life. And so I just brought up that sample of the idea of the death of a parent. It's something that's awful, but, they say time heals all wounds. Well, it doesn't, but you manage to forget and not think about it as constantly as you did right after it happened. So that's what I guess scars are all about.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's great insight, Janet. Okay. So you've explained a lot of it. So how has your focus and the themes of your writing changed? And what were your milestones that you spoke about?
Yeah, I was talking about milestones, and I've just described every god-awful milestone that a person could have. Like, hey, somebody could be dealing with acquaintance rape or family abuse or something, or a near-fatal car accident, and there have to be good milestones as well. I could talk about how I had said that Chicago is the one place where I wanted to live, and when I achieved that, it was amazing. And how I had mentioned how I had said I had done so well as an artist to travel around the country by car. I actually wrote something while I was in New Mexico for doing a Chicago show with other Chicago poets for the National Poetry Slam. So I thought, and I'm gonna read a couple things and talk about happier milestones. So I guess this is one of them. This is a poem called True Happiness in the New Millennium. I wrote it for this show, and this is a 2016 edit of it. I'm holding books because Scars Publications publishes so many books. This is an issued collection book called After the Blues, and I think that is an x-ray of my teeth from the dentist. Anywho, this is called True Happiness in the New Millennium, because the only true happiness this way lies. I'm here to usher in a whole new millennium. I'm the new savior of science, the savior of survival of the fittest, survival of the best. I'm here to tell you that we're starting anew, so fasten your seatbelts, place your seat trays in their upright and locked position, for it's a bumpy ride, and I'll tell you why. I'm here to usher in a whole new millennium, a millennium of reason and logic and strength. You need a leader, and I'm stepping up to the plate. You keep asking for a big brother, and I'm here to set you straight. You want someone to wipe your noses for you? Well, pick up the damn tissue and do it yourself. Because when you give up your rights, you take away mine. And we're not having any of that. I'm here to usher in a whole new millennium. They say that Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, but she shouldn't have stopped just there, because it's now time to take it all back, and I'm here to tell you how it's going to be done. So stop asking for things and start working for things. You're looking for peace in all the wrong places. You're asking your leaders to save you from yourselves, but your leaders are losers, and they're worse off than you. It's time to make choices, and it's time to lay claim to everything that we've been blindly giving away, because I'm here to usher in a whole new millennium. Take charge of yourself. I'll take charge of me. I'm my leader, not yours. So wipe your own damn noses. Take it in your own hands, people. Mold your own tools. This is the new millennium, and this is your chance, because no one should be showing us how to fail. People mastered that feat a millennia ago. I'm here to usher in a whole new millennium, and I'm waiting for you to usher in yours, because the only true happiness this way lies. Ta-da! And I get to sing. And by the way, that was singing that was from True Happiness This Way Lies, from that was the line that I was singing at the beginning and the end of the poem. But anyway, so there are those kind of things, but So there are good memories, but then I would feel like a heel if I didn't say the best milestone. And I think my husband would argue with me, no, getting married is not a milestone, but meeting John has so changed my life because we do everything together. We've traveled the world together. And I would not have done the things that I've done if it wasn't for him. And I probably wouldn't think the way I do if it wasn't for him. I'm a vegetarian. He is a Marine and a hunter. And what? How does that happen? Although I think he found it fascinating that when he finally said, I haven't been feeling so well and decided to become a vegetarian this year. And since he did, his constant, maybe multiple time a week migraines, serious migraines that he would have disappeared. Oddly enough, he's feeling better and things are working just for life choices like that, which is absolutely stunning to me. And so for that, I've got a bit of a poem that I actually read at our wedding. And it actually, this version, because it was set up of just the part that's about theater, is in every event of the year. There's 2 volumes of this poetry book. This is volume 1, January through June. There's also volume 2, July through December. I think when I did a feature in Chicago, I sold out all of my copies here. They're like, don't just give her money for a feature, buy her a book. And I ran out of copies of it. But this is in that book, and it is from Looking for the Adversary, and it is for World Theater Day. All this time I've been playing a part, an actress on a stage spouting the lines on cue. That role was getting tiresome, but those stage lights still came on night after night, and I still had to play my part. Until on my night off I saw your performance at the theater down the street. And you know, your protagonist was doing what I was doing, or right down to faking it with people who don't matter, right down to going home and still feeling empty. Watching your show, I'd like to see the boiling emotion underneath that no one else could see, because only I had the knowledge to know what that emotion really means. So I'm beginning to wonder if we can get together and write our own play. It would be a masterful performance, and as the curtain would close, we'd hold each other's hands and walk off the stage, and the audience would know that there was a happy ending. And now, when I walk out on the set, there you stand, in front, stage left. I wait for my cue to make my move. None of the rest of the scene matters to me. Maybe they'd like our little play. Maybe they wouldn't. Who really cares? Because now my performance of a lifetime is made. I stand here like a statue and wait for my applause as I wait for the reviews for the performance I was made for. I know what they're all going to say, but none of that matters anymore, because I know what you are going to say, because it's everything I want to say. So I'll wait for you to come on stage again for our next wonderful performance, where we have our happy ending. Sorry, I get all gooey.
It's good. So you said that you are also an artist. So what kind of art do you do besides performance art?
Well, it's performance art, but I do primarily photography, because you're seeing. I mean, I did drawings and they mean nothing, and I don't have any of them saved or recorded. But oftentimes it's a matter of showing photography over the years, and if I could pull up like an art book. I don't have any that are in reach. Wait, I've got one. Haha. Good thing I'm in my library. I can just reach over. This is an art book, L'Art, and there would be photography from around the world. I've got Michael Stipe here that I had, painted as well as photographed, and there would be pictures from everywhere, as well as journalism photography, and the camera has always been my tool for doing artwork. And hey, if you look right, this is the Aurora Borealis on the front cover, if you can see it correctly, from when we were in Alaska. We were near the Arctic Circle, and I said, that 1 a.m., it's freezing out, but this is absolutely gorgeous and well worth it to come get a photo for. But primarily it's been in photography. And by saying performance artist, it's a matter of, emoting with myself as my writing. I hope I'm emoting well enough for you guys and for the WZRD crowd. But it's that, as well as doing things like singing or whatever I could to try to fold people in so that they're part of the story as well, instead of just standing here and this is my poem that is called this, and so I've seen that too much, so I've tried to do something more to bring people in as well.
Were you nervous the first time you did performance art?
I was nervous that the machinery wouldn't work. I think the first show I ever did was at the Red Lion, which is in Lincoln Park. And I had this show, and the first 4 pieces I had were like newsy kind of pieces, and I sampled in the classic noise, ba 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 da 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 da, and had that going in and having the typewriter noise. So I that's probably the first time I've ever sampled anything in for any performances of mine. But most of the other time I would just have background music running while I was reading in an open mic, or have something in the background of a set series of things from a feature, since I did them quite regularly for a while in Chicago. But in fact, with that first show, the main speakers blew. Oh, and I'm like, wait, will people be able to hear out of my little speaker these same noises? And everyone's like, yes, we could totally hear just fine. It was wonderful. So that's the only real worry that I had, is will everything work according to plan. I think once on the north side in Lake County, there was a hookah bar that had an hour-long feature and I did a couple of them there, and they had video monitors everywhere, so I set up things on screens, and I had a camera on me, which I did once while I was at the open mic that I ended up running, that it was on me and it was putting my image onto a TV monitor. And I think after that one show at the cafe in Chicago, they were like, I know you were right there, but I just kept staring at you on TV instead, because that's the way Americans are. I was like, oh, you've got a big screen, must pay attention. At some of those shows, I did things like, I've got poem, like, not one of the ones I'm mentioning, but in some of my poems, I'm like, I'm going to see if I can draw them. If you talk about this. And so then I would try to read and try to stay along with the speed of my drawings of poems for so you just try to find different things and different ways to be able to pull it off. Because my husband is a lot better at doing the technology stuff and setting up equipment for stuff. That's very helpful. Everybody call him a lackey or something. I'm like, no, he's more than that. He would play the guitar at times when we were doing stuff, and I guess that incorporates also into music that I've done. It's not a more major part of my life, but I had an acoustic band that was an oldest friend to her husband. I said, hey, let's have a band. And he was coming up with titles. And he's like, how about Mom's Favorite Vase? And I was like, what is that? And he's like, well, didn't you watch the Brady Bunch? And I said, no. And he tells me the story. And I'm like, that's just odd enough that might be appropriate. Let's call ourselves Mom's Favorite Vase. And we're an acoustic band, and we had shows. Uncle John's band opened for us at some place in Chicago, which I thought was really funny, because I'm like, we're just an acoustic band. We should be covering you, really. But they wanted to get out of the U.S. Beer Company, I think. They were like, let's just do a show and go. So I've done things like that, and that was fun and great. And I think you were noting that I had done stuff with music, and Matt Weedman was a gentleman in Colorado that I had done music with once, that I was able to pull stuff up to do a lot of covers with, and that's all it was, covers. But that happened right before, like a week and a half before, 2 weeks before I was almost killed in a car accident. So nothing else. I mean, like, I wasn't able to get over there. Nothing was able to develop from that. I was in different parts of the country. It was just nice to be able to play around and do some music with him when I was there. And my husband John's a very good guitarist, and we've got a party room that has a wall of all of his guitars stretched along, and a bass guitar, and he does that stuff. And I've written an occasional piece for his music, but we'll do a lot of covers as well. We did shows in Alaska, and we did a 2-hour show in Round Rock, but it's not something that we normally do, because we have mostly covers, and we're not a band. We're just people that like to sing and share, and so we like to be with each other. even that way, and that's the thing. That's people ask like, well, what do you? And I'm like, he's an engineer, and I might as well say this. When he was in high school, he's like, I want to be a photojournalist. He was so hellbent. This is my dream. I want to do this. And as he had gone in through the military, he's like, I'm going to go into engineering and do this, which was just the flip of the opposite of what I did. I was like, I'm going to be a computer science engineer, and I'm like, no, I'm going to go into the other. So we tell each other stories, and we can flip and share with each other. And in his spare time, he plays guitar like mad. He was seriously considered as a backup guitarist for Live Aid while it was going on, but Bob Geldof told him he didn't have stage presence to do it, which stinks for him, but it's awesome that he was able to do that well in the first place for it. So it's just a matter of being able to do stuff and share with each other, which is all well and good. It's happy.
So
yeah.
So is he your inspiration? Who has been your mentor and who has been your inspiration?
I've seriously thought about that. No one is my mentor. That sounds really stupid to say, but I mean, like, nobody is somebody like I want to mold myself after them. I can say that there are influences easily of famous people that, as performance artists, Laurie Anderson's work is you could probably see that if you had studied her and studied the shows that I did. She would have things in a chair, and I did one show that I think some of my videos have 70,000 hits of me sitting in a drawing of a big chair while I'm doing things, or how she would incorporate music and stories as telling. In writing, this all sounds silly. Ayn Rand, who is a novelist, her long sentences captured with a single sentence afterward, which is also very journalistically to write about. But there are people like that I can pull ideas from, or inspiration maybe from, but nobody's a mentor. I see something, and you're like, and who inspires you? No individual does. Life does. There's so many things in life, that can make you, for the things that you go through, that makes you want to change things for other people or share with the world for things. So there is no individual for that answer. It's just life in general. And I don't mean to sound silly saying that, but there are so many things that you learn from if you choose to listen and watch for it. So that's what I do.
So in the beginning, you didn't have much of a go-to person to ask for advice concerning your poetic career and your writing career.
This is true, which is why a lot of the stuff that I wrote in high school is not something I would be proud of, or so it wasn't. I wasn't, because at the time I wasn't thinking that is an outlet for the things that you go through, and I may not have gone through as much or seen as much to go through at a younger age. I might not have had that many issues to have that much going on. So no, I don't think I did have much in the early years for that. And it was only when I got on my own and saw what other people were going through and saw what life was really like instead of just being clustered in a home. And yes, I was blessed to say that I was in a home with a married couple that stayed together, and it was, family that stayed together. There may have been weird things about it. I joke to people that my brothers and sisters were 10, 16, 17, and 19 years older than me. There's a huge gap difference, so it's a weird kind of family. But I didn't have to deal with being a latchkey kid because parents were split and working, and I didn't have that to go through. There may have been other issues, but I was lucky enough that wasn't a problem for me at all. So it became, once I saw more of what the world could potentially do to harm others, that I said I have to do something about it somehow, I guess.
What advice would you give for our communications students if you were their mentor?
Oh, wow. Well, if you're a communications major, or if that's what you're thinking of going into, or me in particular was news editorial journalism. If you're doing that, remember to be a journalist. Do not put your opinion or thought on what you think this story is supposed to mean you are telling the news, and that is that. Right now we see so many talking heads on every branch of cable television and whatnot, and oftentimes you see it on network television as well, as they would be sliding in their little notions on things. The true definition of a journalist is to just tell the story just as it is and let people make their own decisions. If you are trying to communicate your ideas, whether they be religious, philosophical, whatnot, keep in mind that there will be somebody that thinks the exact opposite. And if you start like this is what is right, or if you get it all preachy, and you can be and that poem "True Happiness in the New Millennium," I think I read that from Mark Smith once at an open mic, and he's like, "Oh, then this is what we call for preachy." I mean, if you want to communicate something and you want people to actually listen and not be turned off, it is very important to understand that there are multiple sides and try to not berate an opposing view and just give information for people to take it. I have been, for example, a vegetarian for 26 years now. I had to think, how many years back has it been? But I don't go ramming that down people's throats, because although I guess Chicago Diner, the shirt I just got, might be ramming it down because it's a vegetarian place. I wanted to get it when I was here in Chicago, and they're still doing curbside pickup only, and I'm like, oh, so I had to order it online. I felt bad that after all these years I never had a Chicago Diner shirt. But the idea is to lead by example and not by telling people what they're supposed to believe. That is often the strongest way to actually change minds. For example, I've got family members that are vegetarians now, and I've got grandnieces that are vegetarians, and they were asking me because I wasn't stuffing it down their faces, and you just be open and honest and not forward or pushy, and that could actually make change. So I guess that would be the best I guess that's the best I could do. Yeah.
What you're saying, what your advice is that in order for us to avoid false news and misinformation, is what you said, to just give the news as it is, give as many sides as possible without your opinion.
Yep. Oh, definitely. Because that's what journalism is supposed to be. That's the point. Because everybody is looking, oh, here's another option that I can be on TV. Hello. And say, I want to now spout my opinion and other people will listen. And aren't I great for that? And that has become the thing now. And it's hard to get the sides of everything. Things with coronavirus going around, I've got so many people, well, I'm not going to go out because even though you've been vaccinated from it, you can still spread it, and I'm going to still wear a mask or not have it. And I'm like, well, okay, the science doesn't support some of what you're saying, and I know my husband has worked in pharmaceuticals industries for decades. We were taking supplemental things that would help us avoid it before we had a shot, and you can't tell people, well, no, what you're hearing from what one source you got isn't accurate or enough. It's wise to be safe. Of course it is. And I apologize that I don't have my button on that says that I've been vaccinated. But it's hard to be, it's not possible to be able to educate everyone. And so you have to deal with what you can and just lead by what you know and hope that that is enough, because what else can you do?
Let's do a WZRD community assessment with you. WZRD Chicago, being a nonprofit radio station, must be responsible to the community we serve. WZRD is mandated to file quarterly issues with the FCC on non-entertainment, community-focused programming. We like to assess the community for these quarterly issue topics with 3 questions. First, what is most important to you?
Oh, most important to me, personally. I think I'd have to say, and I'm not saying USA, freedom. That means the freedom to be able to say what I want without being reprimanded for it, or being silenced by a government or by other groups. I think I wrote something about, I'm not going to share it here, there was a peace laureate who passed away, and it was wonderful because they were looking for peaceful change during the Tiananmen Square riots. Remember seeing the kid in front of the tank, and well, the Chinese people didn't beat the government alone. It was Liu Xiaobo, I think was his name, I can't remember, who helped them, and then he was put in prison for trying to come up with a peaceful resolution because the government didn't like that. And I wrote this poem, and I said, you know, it's a wonderful thing how us like-minded souls feel like we can just share our beliefs with each other, and that we think we're making a difference. And the key is, you know, just saying things to people who agree with you is one thing, but to actually go out and talk to people who don't agree with you racially, politically, anything like that, is where you could then just extend a hand and say, can we just get along and figure something out together? And that, to have the freedom to be able to actually do that. That's why I'd say the word freedom, just to be able to have the option to be able to share things, to open a door and make things a better place, you know, by yourself or with others. Freedom, freedom. I would like freedom.
What long-term problem must we address?
Long-term problem. This is going to sound like a blanket, because I could say, oh, I want world peace, or, you know, but how do you get that? I would say to stop violence. That can come in any form, from shootings in the wrong neighborhoods in Chicago. That could be not allowing the mass slaughter of animals so that we have, you know, chicken or beef at every meal every day, because those are things that we're doing to support death continually. If we did not, now I'm going to get preachy, sorry, but if we did not create all of these animal products and all of the waste that is done to do that so that humans can eat dead animal, there would be such an amazing effect on the carbon footprint on the entire globe. Because I think animal production causes 17 times more fossil fuel emissions than anything that nature does. But stopping, if you stop that, if you stop dealing with that, you might stop using fossil fuels, which means electric cars, which means that's better for the environment as well. So these are all steps that I would think that if people just stop the idea of violence, because people don't realize that, oh, I'm just having a burger from McDonald's or something, but there's a lot of violence in that, and there was so much destruction just to make something like that happen, that if that was removed, that would save a lot of things for the planet and would probably help the health of people as well, and make us all more pleasant and like each other a lot more in the world. It'd be a better place in the end. I guess.
What problem must we address now?
I think I just answered that.
Long-term.
It sounds like a crazy thing to say, but I mean, every neighborhood, every city has a different set of specific beliefs that they go through. I'm hearing like mad about the homeless problem here in Austin, and their solutions are looking for the same solutions that other cities had done that had failed. And so I don't know what the steps are for these kind of issues so that people would be able to get along. I think of the more basic steps again. I'm like, I think I answered that one already. Just stopping. But because there are many specific little things that I cannot speak to from any given neighborhood, if certain kinds of crime are up in one neighborhood versus something else, which I cannot speak to those individual little things. So I just say, don't be so violent, and we'd all be happier people. Like me.
Janet, yes, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I have no idea the time because I'm just sitting here enjoying stuff. I don't know if you'd have the time, because I would have shared one brand new poem with you guys if you had the time.
Please.
And it's another happy poem kind of thing. This was not published in a book of mine because it's new, but some gentleman in the UK did a group called Joined Up Writing, where they came up with, and somebody would start a poem, and they, at the last line of the poem, the guy, Finn Hall, would ask another writer, okay, here's a line, continue this. Blah. And so I asked if I could be a part of this, and he said yes, and he said that I could have spot 101 in his, and it's been released as a little book. It's just a little thing in the UK that I got for Joined Up Writing. And if anybody knows 1984, you will know what room 101 was, but I just thought it was funny that I was 101 on this. And there was a poem that talked about sea going out, driftwood going out to sea, and that's all I had to go on. And so I wrote, and I ended up making it into this amazing love poem, which brings me back to the whole concept of love and one of those great milestones. So this is called Out to the Horizon. Driftwood disintegrated out with the tide, like flotsam wreckage from what we survived. Jetsam drifts to shore while we all still so fall in love with the sea. And our essence drifts out toward the horizon until I find myself lost, wondering where on earth that damn land is. I know, we are 70% water. I can feel like a fish, a dolphin, or even a bird like an Arctic penguin porpoising our way through the deepest depths, for water is our essence. Too many times that ocean called out to me, and I dove in, head first, swimming out too far, until violent winds came, crashing into me, capsizing me deep into the sea, forcing down my throat an ocean of traumas, past, present, future, until I suddenly wonder if it matters if it rains treading water. A cyclone, hurricane, typhoon swells inside me until water overwhelms me. Wow. I start randomly swimming. I look for land, pick a direction, try to find that edge. They say that land is vast, but this water seems endless. So I start to panic. And this is when I realize that the edge is right there. Is it dirt? Is it sand? When I finally get there, I see the wrinkles in your cupped hands, holding that water, holding that world. And now it all suddenly comes flooding back. You saved me again, like I saved you before. Our souls intertwined. We've lived for eons, nourishing each other. From climbing the Alps to following Darwin, Arbeit macht frei, wrought iron gates rattle in our hands. We shiver together in midnight South Pole winds, make music before the 1 a.m. Arctic aurora borealis. So what if armed guards from the Russia are watching us? Don't cry for me. Throughout the hemispheres, throughout history, we step over those old gold bars to emperor rooms. For as I said, we've lived for eons, nourishing each other. And now it's your turn to hold that water, to let me swim to your hands until I climb out, jump onto your earth, stand. You then turn your hands, spill that water, and finally embrace me.
What's the name of the poem again?
The poem is called Out to the Horizon. Out to the Horizon. Now this is set up as a continuation of poems in a book that doesn't have a title. So this little thing of mine, it just starts on a page and continues on from someone else. So it doesn't have a title in here. It's poem 101 in this book, but that was called Out to the Horizon. And all of those events that I said of, oh, we make music while we had a concert in Alaska before we were watching the aurora borealis. So those are the kind of things. I mean, I'm sure I've got Arbeck Mach Frey iron gates that I've photographed here. So we've had these experiences and gone these places. So I'm like, do you think that works? And John's like, that totally works. Because that can ascribe to anybody, and you can mark these things in history as well. So I hope that worked. And so thank you for letting me share my newest poem. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. How could viewers, our listeners, learn more about you, access your work, and maybe see you in performance somewhere? Do you have anything coming up?
Well, everything is still in the Zoom universe. So if you want to know about me, you have to know how to spell my name. Janet, Janet. Kuypers, Kuypers. And you can go to there. Or if you want to know anything about the magazines that I run or find links to me, you can go to Scars Publications, which online is scars.tv, because we do so much stuff with videos as well, and I've had CDs released, so scars.tv, you can find out anything there. I'm running the poetry open mic that is once a month that is called Poetic License. People in Chicago who saw me at a feature at Gallery Cabaret remembered that when they read haikus at one of my shows for one of my book releases, the book was Partial Nudity, it was called, they read haikus and they got cards that said they had Poetic License. So I'm like, that's a good name. So it's a poetry open mic that's on the first Sunday of every month from 3:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon, Central Standard Time. There is a Zoom meeting for it, and there is always a Facebook event page that will give you a link to the Zoom meeting so that anybody is welcome. I know that the open mic host that took over for me, Dave Getchuk, has shown up there. Lynn West has been there. Vittorio Carli has been there. But then again, there have been the gentleman that sponsors the Zoom meeting is from New York, and there are people from my literary magazines that come by, and every once in a while I get people from the UK as well. Everyone is welcome, and I would love to hear from everyone. It means the world to me to hear all these people read. So there you go.
So they would access the Zoom link from your Facebook page?
Correct. We list the Facebook page, the Zoom link at the Facebook event page, or you could write to me and ask about it if you find me on Facebook, or if you find me on Twitter, if you know the spelling of my name, blah, blah, blah. Or through Scars.tv, you can find me that way as well to learn about it. And if you go to Scars.tv, you can go to the audio video section and do a search for Poetic License, and you'll see a link to it right there as well. Scars.tv, capital Poetic, _ capital L license, and that would give you information about it as well. And I would love it if anybody would love to come. And I love bringing everyone together because these Zoom meetings work well for being far apart from each other and still being able to connect in some way, and it's wonderful. So, and thank you very much for this opportunity for being here as well. Yay, WZRD. I have to show off my sticker. Yay, WZRD. Thank you.
Yes, Zoom is able to bring more people together, but the people that used to be together are just not as close together via Zoom.
This is true. I know that when I was running the open mic for Gallery Cabaret, I would bring computer equipment tripods and cameras, because back in Chicago I had the ability to record the entire open mic. I informed people of this, and I ran a podcast for it, which I had it researched. It got one download on average every hour and a half. 24/7. Actually that many people, that blew my mind. So, but I don't have that here, and so I do not record the entire open mics when I had them at the bookstore, which is also different from being at a bar at nighttime. So you have a different, and you have to be a G crowd because little kids could be coming through or whatever. But while going there, I would have to also bring, for Poetic License, I would bring a mini amp and the mic stand and everything, which is a bit more laborious, but at the same time, I'm able to say, oh, that was a wonderful job, thank you very much. Well, the next poet up, you know you're this, and you don't wait for the smattering of applause and the minute and a half for getting up and getting down and getting ready. People can just go, which means we could probably get more reading done, which is cool. So, yeah, you're right, we don't get to sit there and hug each other, and I believe if and when we're able to get the open mic running at the Recycled Reads bookstore again, I probably will not have a microphone, just because people are worried and we don't want to be sticking your face into a microphone that everyone shares and ew, gross, germs, blah, blah, blah. So I probably won't have that, which I guess means less work for me, but you'd still have that closeness. There would still be the time elapse of getting up, going down, and applause, 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 which you don't get. You see a lot of people doing the symbols and things for it, which is, all you can expect in a Zoom meeting, which is probably fine and probably good for people who don't get that much applause in the first place, because you can all think you did great.
Well, thank you so much, Janet Kuypers, for all your insight on performance art, and addressing society's ills via art.
And thank you.
You're welcome. This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.